request the President to review those appointments for the region and perhaps for the rest of the country.
Tulipotoka na kuomba kura, tulizungumza lugha ya kuwa vijana wetu ndo tutakaoandika kazi.
Sasa Mudhaura mko na shida gani na Mudhaura amewakosea nini?
More uproar over Uhuru's appointment of parastatal chiefs. It is all systems go for tomorrow's NYARIBARI CHACHE mini poll.
Iwa hana ushahidi kamili juu ya rais wa Kenya, sioni ushahidi gani ambao atapata juu ya naibu wa rais wa Kenya.
Mimi naumwa kama ni mzazi. Ikiwa mheshimiwa Uhuru hana kesi, hata mheshimiwa Ruto hana kesi.
Politicians now pile pressure on ICC over Ruto's case. Uneasy truce as South Sudan militia halt march to recapture the town of Bor.
KTN Weekend Prime with Yvonne Okwara.
We're glad you've made the time to join us on this last Sunday of the year 2013. It is the 29th day of December this year. Welcome to our bulletin. Good evening. Let's start off with that contentious issue of appointments. Revolt, public furore and backlash continue to eclipse President Uhuru Kenyatta's appointment of 26 parastatal chiefs. Rebellion is brewing, with Jubilee parliamentarians calling for a reversal of the appointments, especially the appointment of Ambassador Francis Mudhaura as chairman of the Lamu Port South Sudan Ethiopia Transport Corridor project known as LAPSIT, which is causing more heat, with Jubilee MPs saying the president is choking on his digital platform campaign and is instead backtracking into analog tendencies.
A revolt against the president's parastatal chiefs appointees is reaching boiling point. A growing dissent is mounting, with the Jubilee Alliance parliamentarians leading the mutiny, demanding for the revocation of the appointments. Half of those appointed are either the president's cronies or poll losers in a perceived rewarding of loyalists.
The kind of pressure you're seeing is not coming from the leaders, it's coming from the people who put us in office. And as you know, in politics, when anything stands between you and the people who elected you, then you definitely as a leader stand on the side of your people.
Tulipotoka na kuomba kura, tulizungumza lugha ya kuwa vijana wetu ndo tutakaoandika kazi. Vijana wana madigrii wamekaa mabarazani, kisha mnatuambia watu wasiandikwe kazi, wale waregelee. Jameni, hata kama nkutuhadaa, tafuteni njia nyingine.
The re-entry of former head of civil service Ambassador Francis Mudhaura in public service as the chairman of the Lamu Port South Sudan Ethiopia Transport Corridor project, LAPSIT, has sparked a backlash. Leaders from Mudhaura's backyard of Meru region have threatened to revolt against the president if he does not rescind the appointment.
We find ourselves very uncomfortable and unable to support this position, because in Meru we believe we have two very serious groups of people that whose interests must be addressed.
For us, we want to request the president to review those appointments for the region and perhaps for the rest of the country, consistent with the Jubilee manifesto that requires diversity, inclusivity.
Sasa Mudhaura mko na shida gani na Mudhaura amewakosea nini? Ala, tunaelewana ama tuelewani? Pilipili usioila wewe ya kuwashiani.
The president faces rebellion and condemnation from within. Protagonists of the revocation of the appointments say Uhuru has backtracked on the Jubilee campaign pledges and betrayed his own manifesto on fostering a youthful administration.
Whatever he has done is not to the best interest of this country and the best interests of the Meru people, bearing in mind the agenda that revolved around the Jubilee campaign was an issue to do with the youth and to address the inequality between the youth and the old.
Hawa waheshimiwa wenzangu hawa sahi wananipigia kelele hapa maneno ya wazee. Wengi wao wakati sisi tulikuwa tunaomba kura tunasema mtupigie kama vijana, si walipigia ule mzee? Sasa mambo gani hii tena mnaleta hapa? Kwani Mudhaura na yule Raila sini age moja?
13 of the appointees are President Uhuru's loyalists who lost in the March 4th elections. Others are powerful businessmen and party handlers who are steadfast with the president. But divergent voices have wrapped the president's actions as skewed and do not reflect regional balance and equality in the appointments.
Bwana chukua kazi za serikali upatie jamii mbili Kenya peke yake. Ni haki ya Wakenya wengine wapewe nafasi ya kufanya kazi za serikali. Lakini kama wewe Rais Uhuru hutaki kusikia vile ninakwambia, ujue you have only 4 more years.
It is checkmate for the president as he has to ponder on containing dissatisfaction within his coalition and entice his loyalists. Samogina, KTN.
Preparations for the CHACHE by-elections that will take place tomorrow are in high gear as the Electoral Commission places final touches before the vote contest scheduled to begin at 6 a.m. 8 candidates are gunning to replace ODM's Chris Bichage, who lost the seat in a petition against his March 4th win. KTN's Fredo Muller is in Kisii town and gives us the latest.
Most Kenyans were enjoying their festive holidays. Officials of the IEBC have been frantically preparing for the CHACHE by-elections set to take place tomorrow from 6 a.m. The grueling task that began at 2 p.m. proceeded without a hitch at the Musa Nyandusi Social Hall in Keumbu, the constituency tallying center.
Ballot papers usually delay, but this time round, the ballot papers arrived 2 days in advance. I have just finished opening the ballot papers with the chief agents of political parties. Everything is on course and we don't have any shortage at all. All the materials are there.
So far, all the manual and electronic systems have proven reliable in test runs. Voters in Bobaracho ward will be marked on their right hand because most still have an ink mark on their left finger after voting in a ward by-election on December 19th.
We will not use the provisional result that is transmitted to declare anybody, but we'll use this for announcing a result until all the presiding officers come physically. Again, we do the recounting manually.
The Orange Democratic Party has, however, raised concerns of malpractices ahead of the vote. Its target, the IEBC and TNA.
Na pia tumesikia habari za kununua kura, tumepata habari za vitisho vya vita, wanataka kuleta fujo katika sehemu fulani, hasa vituo vya hapo mjini town.
Both dared ODM to file official complaints if armed with evidence, something that was yet to happen by the time of going to air. Not to be left behind, supporters of the Ford People candidate had their own bone to pick with the president's party.
The Ford People, with the advice of our Honorable Mheshimiwa Nyachae, told the Kisii community to be behind the Jubilee government. We expected the Jubilee government to support a person or a candidate from Ford People.
NYARIBARI CHACHE has more than 58,000 registered voters who will cast their ballots in more than 80 polling centers. 350 clerks have been trained to facilitate the exercise. Despite the complaints of one of the parties regarding the potential conduct of the by-election tomorrow, the IEBC is proceeding with the preparations and is having a tough task considering it has to cater for the demands of 9 candidates while delivering a free and fair exercise. From NYARIBARI CHACHE in Kisii County, I am Fredo Mulo.
From Kisii County, let's go to Kilifi. Calls to have the ICC case against Deputy President William Ruto dropped have reverberated to other regions in the country. Leaders drawn from the coast region now demand that ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda clears Ruto of the charges against him. Betty Kyalo has the details.
Fatou Bensouda's request to have President Uhuru Kenyatta's case adjourned for lack of sufficient evidence continues to draw reactions from various quarters in the country, with leaders demanding for clearance of Uhuru and Ruto's names. The latest offensive to have the case against Ruto dropped was in Kilifi today, where the Deputy President and other leaders attended Kilifi South MP Mustafa Idi's homecoming. The leaders, most of them from coast region, said that Ruto needed to be in the country to execute his administrative duties and that Bensouda did not have sufficient evidence against him.
Sincerely saying that let us solve our problems now that you have told us you do not have any proof. And if you do not have any proof against His Excellency the President, we see no reason why you can tell us you have proof against a gentleman called William Ruto.
Kama vile ambavyo anafikiria kuwa hajapata ushahidi wa kisawasawa na kesi ya Mheshimiwa William Ruto, aitupilie mbali wa Kenya tupate kwenda mbele.
Mheshimiwa Ruto alikuwa ameekelewa mambo mengi sana, na sisi tunakuombea Mheshimiwa Ruto, hata usiogope, kesi ile utaishinda.
Tuachie watoto wetu warudi nyumbani, tukae nao chini, tuzungumze, tuendeleze Kenya yetu isonge mbele.
Kwa sababu ile kesi vile mimi ninavyoiona haina msimamo, haina mwelekeo.
However, Ruto chose to stay clear of the ICC issue and addressed other matters, including the need for Kenyans to work together without ethnic divisions.
Tunataka kuunda Kenya moja. Tunataka kuweka ushirikiano. Tunataka kuweka umoja. Ndio tuweze kujenga Kenya itakayotufaa sisi zote.
Over the recent weeks, a cross-section of leaders have weighed in on the call to have the Kenyan cases at the ICC dropped. Last week, leaders allied to the Code Coalition said that should the charges against the president be dropped, then Ruto should also be exonerated.
If the case of Uhuru collapses, the case of Ruto must be withdrawn and no Kenyan should be sacrificed.
They don't believe that you participated in the planning of any violence. To me and to us from this region, that is a big lie.
Ruto's case is expected to resume on the 13th of January 2014. Betty Kialo, KTN.
Now, an interesting supremacy battle is brewing in Nyanza following Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero's fundraising activities in the region, where the minority coalition CORD enjoys massive support. Following a meeting at CORD leader Raila Odinga's home Monday to deliberate on the region's political leadership, more leaders allied to Odinga have continued to resist Kidero's advances. They see his activities as efforts to divide the region's political support. Now, last month, Kidero presided over a fundraiser in aid of Tomboya Secondary School in Awendo, where 15 million shillings was raised, including a 2 million shilling donation from President Uhuru Kenyatta and 500,000 shillings from Deputy President William Ruto. And just last weekend, Rongo MP Dalmas Otieno hosted another Kidero fundraiser, which raised 6.4 million shillings. Now the leaders allied to Odinga are castigating both Dalmas Otieno and the Nairobi governor, accusing them of carrying out a Jubilee agenda in the region.
As he brings 1 million for the Arambe, we want more money for our roads. We want money for roads. Arambe cannot build our roads. To get in our midst and try to divide us as a community. We shall not allow anyone, because if you say that the problem in NYANZA is poverty, that the only way to solve it is to by lowering Jubilee to come and do Arambes. Did you realize that yesterday? Or today? Or last month? If there's a problem in this nation of lowland, it is because of Kanu and Moism. Madam Mas was part and parcel of. We want more money to be devoted to CIA to develop CIA. We want more money to come from national government to county government to develop counties.
Let's move away from politics for a moment now. Imagine spending the holidays not knowing where one of your family members is. This is the fate of several families whose loved ones have disappeared seemingly without a trace. For some, it has been months of uncertainty. For others, a few weeks. The fear, however, is that these weeks will turn into months and maybe even years. But as KTN's Edith Kimani explains, the worst part for these families with missing persons this season is the not knowing. There is an eerie silence when we arrive at Victor Odhiambo's residence. His uncle and aunt, nieces and nephews say nothing to us until we begin our interview. We're here because Edgar Ayeko, who is related to them, is missing. He has been missing for 23 days now, and no one knows where to find him.
So the last time my brother came to my house, I had a party, and he left at around 2 o'clock. He never mentioned where he was going.
The details surrounding the disappearance are sketchy, but there is one thing that has led this family to believe strongly that Edgar is being held involuntarily. On the day he disappeared, the person Edgar was last seen with also fell off the grid.
My traces show that they went to town. Now from town, no one knows what happened. No one knows where they went. But all their phones went off, both phones went off on the same 7th at 6 in the evening.
By that time we thought it was just a small issue. The guy may just be somewhere, will come back.
This is the same assumption Samuel Miner's family had when their son went missing on September 20th, that he would come back. We spoke to the family in November. A month later,
sorry, the mobile subscriber cannot be reached.
There is still no news on Miner. This is the same story with Paul Kimita Gadhoni's family. Paul left for work as he did every day on the morning of November 13th, but his neighbors are yet to see him back in his flat, which he lives in alone. Victor's family is hoping theirs will be a happy ending. The family has already had to go through difficult and uncomfortable scenarios looking for Edgar even in the morgues. But the trail is cold and police assistance has been disappointing.
They are very, very slow with information, and I'm trying I'm an advocate. I've tried from my sources, I've tried to patch up the evidences that I have so that I help the police.
By the time we're leaving, the family is even more still than when we arrived. No one says anything. Victor keeps glancing at his phone, perhaps in anticipation that his brother will miraculously call him. Edith Kimani, KTN. Right, let's now bring you the latest out of South Sudan, and this is news that we are receiving this evening. A group of armed militiamen loyal to South Sudan's Riek Machar has abandoned a planned march into Bor town in the state of Jonglei. Government sources say rebel leaders, a tribal militia, has stood down after talks with community elders. Now, this comes after Machar said that he mistrusts the government's call for a ceasefire. Here's KTN's Ashamwilu with the latest.
The glimmer of hope for a ceasefire in South Sudan on Sunday morning seemed out of reach. Thousands of youths allied to rebel leader Riek Machar were planning to march to Bor, a city reclaimed from their hold earlier in the week by government troops. The move left humanitarian agencies in South Sudan at high alert. The marching group is reportedly part of the infamous White Army, a tribal militia group feared by many for its vicious attacks. By evening, however, the forces had abandoned their plans to march. South Sudan's government officials said community leaders had persuaded the White Army to go home. The youth had already been located by a UN surveillance flight about 50 kilometers from Bor. These new developments have opened an awkward space in the ongoing attempts by regional leaders to start dialogue between President Salva Kiir and his rival Riek Machar.
Our government has positively responded to the demands of the international community and IGAD in particular.
While the government said it was ready for an immediate ceasefire, Machar expressed mistrust in the mediation process, saying he needed a leveled negotiation.
Ceasefires are negotiated by two delegations, and then mechanisms for monitoring the ceasefires are put in place so that the ceasefire becomes a credible ceasefire.
The 2-week-long clashes have exposed more than the deeply rooted political and ethnic challenges faced by the young nation. They have also left South Sudan's economy dangling in instability. The nation relies on oil for 98% of its national budget. The oil-producing states are unfortunately at the helm of those affected by the unrest. Allies like China are now feeling the ripples from the instability in South Sudan. China imports 77% of South Sudan's crude oil, leaving Japan to import 14% and India 4%.
China is greatly concerned with the development of South Sudan's situation and is promoting negotiations in its own way. We've been keeping close communication with South Sudan and its neighboring countries, as well as some regional organizations like the African Union. We will work with all relevant parties to promote the conflicting sides in solving their disputes through dialogue and negotiation, and promote the situation of South Sudan to resume stability as soon as possible.
A regional bloc, IGAD, gave Kir and Machar up to the 30th of December to cease the fighting and to meet face-to-face by the 31st of December. But with the two main actors drifting further from the prospect of dialogue, the world is now left alarmed that fears of a possible genocide in South Sudan might become a reality. Ashamwilu, KTN Weekend Prime.
Now back to the country. 2 years after the Second World War ended in 1945 in Gilgil, Nakuru County, one woman was so grateful that her two sons had returned from the war alive that she built a church to thank God. Eleanor Cole also dedicated the church to her late husband, one of the earliest settlers in the country. 66 years later, the church still stands. The Goodwill Church in Gilgil has furniture from the 1940s and has retained its original architectural design with few modifications. Rita Tinina has details of the decades-old church and the settler who was deported for shooting an African.
Just a few kilometers from the Nairobi-Nakuru highway in Gilgil stands a little-known stone chapel. But if history is anything to go by, this is one unique church. Named the Church of Goodwill, history has it that it was built around 1947.
The Goodwill Church was constructed by a lady called Eleanor Cole. She was the wife of Lord Gabriel Cole.
Lord Gabriel Cole was one of the pioneer European settler farmers in the country. He was a brother-in-law to Lord Delamere, who married Cole's sister Florence. In fact, it was Lord Delamere who gifted Lord Galbraith Cole with at least 30,000 acres of land that Cole named Kikupe Ranch. Lord Galbraith Cole's widow Eleanor had the Church of Goodwill built, and immediately upon its completion,
and she dedicated this church to her husband in 1947.
That was 20 years after Lord Galbraith Cole's death, and Eleanor had more reasons for building the church.
And she constructed the church in order to thank God for her two sons who went to World War II and then they came back alive.
Close to 7 decades later, little betrays the number of years that this structure has stood here. The church has maintained its original design. Aside from minor repairs to the cracks on the walls, everything else is as it was in the late 1940s. The altar has not been modified at all. Even the chairs are the same ones that were brought into the church some 66 years ago. The pulpit stand, that one too, is from the 1940s. This is one place that would be the envy of many antique collectors, from the candle holders made in a generation gone by to the flower stands. It is evident someone paid attention to detail when designing the items. The church bell may no longer be in use, but it's here in its original position, complete with a bell tower. The Lamu-style door may have that aging wooden look, but it still serves the same purpose it was meant to those many years back. On this door, it is only the padlock that is modern. From the inside, the 1940s idea of a door latch, and it is still in use to date. The church does not have glass windows, but the colonial architects had their own innovative ideas. The split-level design on the walls was meant to allow light into the church. It still works in these modern times. These seemingly little spaces let in enough daylight into the church.
We find that it's necessary for it to be conserved the way it is, so that it can be conserved as a monument and also as a tourist attraction site.
The cathedral-style ceiling in this church too has not seen any modifications. And the safe, well, from the look of it, anything stored here would have been safe, quite literally. The tithe box and hymn board have benefited from a coat of varnish, and some plastic chairs have been added to help accommodate the increased number of worshippers here.
It is used as a normal church, and it is under the management of the Anglican Church of Kenya.
Outside the church is a small graveyard with the remains of several colonialists and military men.
They normally come for a memorial service every year, and they usually come as far as from Europe, and the ones who are still within Gilgil town and some other areas, maybe towns in Kenya.
Lord Galbraith Cole, whose Kikope ranch was sold to a cooperative society in the 1970s and who was among the first settlers to import white sheep into the country, had some troubled times at the ranch.
He had a herd of cattle alongside with the sheep, but you find that one day we had an African worker who stole one of his sheep. He had to shoot him, and eventually he had to be deported back.
But Cole would not keep away from Kenya. He returned secretly.
But he came in a mysterious way. They had to hide him in a coffin, and he just got back to Kenya. But all of a sudden now he was crippled in one way. But because of the ailment, then one day he had to shoot himself.
That was in 1929. Lord Galbraith Cole cut short his life at the age of 48. But this church, which was dedicated to him by his widow Eleanor Cole, still stands.
The National Museums of Kenya carry on this prehistoric site. We felt that it's a monument, it's a kind of a monument which needs to be restored and preserved.
With minor restoration efforts to ensure the structural integrity of this building, the Anglican Church has managed to maintain the original architectural design of this church close to 7 decades later. Rita Tinina, KTN, at the ACK Goodwill Church in Gilgil, Nakuru County.
Thanks for that. Make a point of visiting it if you can during the festive season. We want to take a short break right here on KTN Weekend Prime, but don't go too far because here's what we have coming up for you next.
The forgotten IDPs.
Welcome back. We're glad you're still with us. Kenya's tourism scene is one that has come under increased pressure over the last few years. But now the Kenya Tourism Board is working with local hoteliers in tailoring new products to attract tourists. And as Michael Karanja reports, water sports at the coast might just be the remedy needed to get tourists flocking back to the Kenyan coast.
For many tourists going to the coast, it has been all about relaxing on the white sandy beaches and soaking up some sunshine. But in an effort of keeping guests active, hoteliers at the coast are now developing activities getting guests more engaged. Water sports has been a huge hit with guests, with jet skiing one of those pastimes that they can't get enough of. For just under 5,000 shillings, one can enjoy half an hour setting out into the Indian Ocean on one of the jet skis. For thrill seekers, the feeling can be exhilarating, achieving speeds of 60 kilometers per hour on the wavy ocean. Experts say that hotel bed occupancy can go up by 30% from sports tourism alone.
There's so much. It's just that
People don't know, and people are not pushing for it. People are not complementing leisure with sports, because ideally right now this is festive season where we have people staying for 5 days. When people stay for 5 days, what do you want them to do? You can't have them sleep every day for 5 days. You need to involve them. And how do you involve them? This is now where it comes into play, where you get them to the water.
But if jet skiing is not your thing, why not head out with one of the local fishermen and try your hand at fishing? This breaks the rather normal routine of lounging in hotel rooms and gives one a chance to interact with the local community. The Kenya Tourist Board has been working with hoteliers at the coast to try and diversify their products on the back of increased competition from other coastal destinations such as Zanzibar and Mauritius. If tapped well, it has the potential of showing up numbers that have been slowly declining. Michael Karanja, KTN.
Right, see if you can get up to some fun, especially with the festive season still in full gear, with the New Year celebrations coming up in the next week. Let's take another short commercial break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's have a recap for you of our top story in our bulletin tonight. Revolt, public furor and backlash continue to eclipse President Uhuru Kenyatta's appointment of 26 parastatal chiefs. Rebellion is brewing, with Jubilee parliamentarians calling for a reversal of the appointments. The appointment of Ambassador Francis Mudhara as chairman of the Lamu Port South Sudan Ethiopia Transport Project, known as LAPSET, is causing more heat, with Jubilee MPs saying the president is choking on his digital platform campaign pledges and instead backtracking into analog tendencies. Right now, students from across the country today took part in the Dreams Come True Talent Search competition here in Nairobi. Judges, parents and others in the audience marveled at the display of refined skills by the competitors. Here is Shan Momanyi with more.
It was a day that saw the display of talent at its best, from mind-blowing vocals to the captivating swing and designs by models. The hundreds of high school students from schools across the country who converged in Nairobi for the Dreams Come True Talents competition definitely closing the year at a high. Today marked the semi-final competition of the show, which is currently in its third season. Christine Wamaitha, a student at St. Mary's Girls in Limuru, won the Best Design category, with judges citing creativity. The crowning moment, much too emotional.
Nimekuwa nikimsukuma sana, hata kila siku mimi huwa namleta hapa. Hata wakati aliniambia kwa shule anafanya modeling, nilifurahi sana na nikamwambia nitamsupport na njia yoyote.
Gracing the event was Miss Africa Switzerland, who was stunned by the talent displayed by the students.
It was very interesting. I wasn't expecting that at all. It was even better than what I had expected, actually. They really had a lot of creativity and did very beautiful work.
But it was not all good news for the competitors, as others unfortunately failed to impress.
Next time, please try another song. Okay?
The competition has in it 20 categories, including beadwork, hairstyling, fashion, painting, drawing, news presentation, among others.
Took a part in the category of news anchoring, and I believe I have the passion for it, and I can do more if I'm given another chance.
And it's all about education. Yeah, the fact that you win and you get scholarship means a lot to them. It means they also want education in their lives.
The program that has been running for 6 years now aims to nurture and reward young talent. Sharon Momanyi, KTN.
Good luck to them, not just this year, but in the coming year as well. We want to take another short break, but coming up in sports, we'll continue highlighting the events that marked 2013 in the sporting world. Stay with us.
You are watching KTN Weekend Prime.
KOTH BIRO tournament continued today with inexperienced side 1000 Street cruising over Umeme FC 2-0. Umeme FC's defense was exposed by David Ojwang's pass that found Peter Chuma, who slotted in the opener just 1 minute after the kickoff. Umeme FC lacked the cutting edge that got them touted as favourites to clinch the title. 5 minutes before the breather, 1000 Streets were at it again. David Ojwang capitalized on a defensive lapse and netted the second. Both teams wasted numerous chances after the breather. KOTH BIRO finals are slated for the 11th of January, with the winning team pocketing 250,000 shillings. We had time for you. Thank you so much for watching KTN Weekend Prime. Indeed, not just today, but throughout the year. Mine is to wish you a happy new year. Blessings for 2014. We will see you again in the new year. Good night. My name is Yvonne Okwara.